Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the City of East Providence City Council meeting. Today is Tuesday, December 17th. May we all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Councilman Cahoon.
Here.
Councilman Morato.
Here.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Here.
Councilwoman Souza.
Here.
And Council President Brito.
Here. Thank you. Next item, please.
Next item is motion to seal the minutes from executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morato.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
And Council President Brito.
Aye. First item on the docket.
Next item is approval of consent calendar. Motion to approve.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Roll call vote.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morato.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
And Council President Brito.
Aye. Next item, please.
Presentation for Arcadis Strategic Assessment of Wastewater Operating Contract and Wholesale Services.
Excuse me, if we could, if I could interrupt you, Mr. President, could we, as a courtesy to the guests who are here at this point, just move up to first the agenda, the lottery housing drawing, so that those folks that are here, we can take place, and then we could resume the docket.
Any objections from the council?
None.
No, with no objections. We'll move up the housing drawing.
Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, members of the council. We're very proud today to be able to offer an opportunity for a deserving veteran at being able to rent one of our properties at a very affordable rate. I'd like to call up David Bacharach from our Community Development Block Grant and David Osrees with the State of Rhode Island Veterans Affairs Office. We had, how many applications now?
About 24, 25.
24 applications. David's vetted them. He's created two pools, a pool of veterans that he's vetted to make sure they meet the qualifications, and a pool of non-veterans. When we discussed this first, we wanted to be able to give veterans the preference. And how we decided we're going to do that is we're going to have Mr. Osrees pull out the first person out of the veterans pool, and then he will pull out two people out of the non-veterans pool. So if everything doesn't work out with the first veteran that we select, it'll go to a non-veteran. So we make it fair and equitable. So if you want to start this off, where would you like to stand?
Should I stand by the podium?
Okay.
So this is the veteran pool. There's just numbers there. I have the numbers that have the corresponding names with them. And I'll now pass it to the mayor. He hasn't seen this yet, but I figured the mayor could read out the name of the lucky veteran.
Okay.
Would you like to say anything, Dave?
Happy holidays. Thank you for having us. It's the magic.
Go.
Let's pick number 6. So number 6 corresponds with the name of Harold Alex Ife. Is that correct?
Yes.
Harold Alex Ife is the veteran who was selected. Now,
Mayor, can you spell that last name, please?
yes, I will. It's ALEXIEFF, first name Harold, HAROLD.
Okay.
Congratulations to Harold, and we will select two more non-veterans.
What's he get, 2 roommates? 1 bedroom, 2 roommates?
He's going to learn who they are right now.
We selected number 14. That number corresponds with Julia Dempsey, DEMPSTEY. I'm going to pick one more.
Last one. Some wall.
Number 17 is Ebony Tugman, Tudman. So congratulations to all of the people who were drawn today. And what's the date that we plan on turning over the keys? Once we,
I believe it's at 1 p.m. on December 23rd, because we'd love to give a veteran or one of these community members a wonderful Christmas present of their new home.
So we invite you all to be there on the 21st at 47 Payette Street.
Mr. President, could I ask one question? Mr. Mayor, in 10 seconds or less, for those who don't know, and I know I had a couple of people ask me, like, where did this house come from? Could you just explain
Absolutely.
quickly what it is?
So the city did a land swap with the Providence Country Day many years ago, and this was actually the carekeeper's home for the original PCD property where the school was located. The city has historically rented it out to low to moderate income people, and the home became available. We invested HUD money, Federal Housing and Urban Development money, into completely renovating the home. The home has been completely renovated with new appliances. It's a one-bedroom. We feel it'll make a wonderful home for someone, and we're glad we were able to pick somebody out today. So,
Thank you.
thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mayor. Any of the winners here, by the way? No winners here?
Is the winner here?
No?
He didn't make it here. All right, he's not here.
Not required. I'll be informing everybody tomorrow.
All right.
Okay, I'm sure they know at this point in time. Thank you, Mayor. And Madam Clerk, if we can just proceed, and if I'm not mistaken, we would like to, as a council, and correct me if I'm wrong, just bump up the water presentation in the interim. If we can bump that up as well, and we'll proceed in the order of fashion of what we have as far as the dock is concerned immediately following. Mayor?
Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, members of the council, it's my honor and pleasure to present to you a couple of team members from the Arcadis group. We have Jennifer Lockmeyer, all right, and Amy Anderson. Early on, we as a city determined that we wanted to look at all possible options when it comes to moving forward on the management of our wastewater treatment plant. And they were contracted to look at all the different possibilities. They will make a presentation to you, and then we'll have to sit down and decide the best course of action that we can take as a city moving forward. Today, they're just presenting what they found in their studies.
Is part of this presentation with the use of the monitors above our heads?
Yes,
Okay.
You pass out the...
Yes, and we also brought packets for you.
Yes.
Okay.
We have them.
Let me get it. Thank you, sir.
So yes, this is the strategic assessment of the wastewater operating contract and wholesale services. So tonight's agenda, you heard who we are. We'll go over the project goals. We'll look at the historic timeline of where you've been. We'll talk about the existing Suez contract. We'll do a summary of the work that we've done to date, which includes some review of the wholesale agreements that you have. We'll talk about options for moving forward, and we'll review the costs and schedules to move forward. So I'm Jennifer Lockmeyer. This is Amy Anderson. I would also add that both Amy and I have been working. We worked on the original DBO procurement over 10 years ago, and we also worked with Steve Kutu and Eric Skadberg back then too. So the four of us have that continuity going. Arcadis is a regional, we're a worldwide company. We employ over 400 people in New England alone. With that, I'll go on. So what we're going to talk about tonight are that you have before you basically three different options. You can renegotiate your existing contract for renewal with Suez for a new term. You could procure new contract through an RFP process, or you can resume municipal operations of the wastewater system. So the goals of the wastewater operations, what this contract does right now, is it operates and maintains your wastewater system. It provides cost-effective wastewater services for your ratepayers. It maintains a level of service as well as maintaining your permit requirements. It requires really a long-term approach and long-term thinking, and it preserves your infrastructure. So here's our timeline. Back in 2007, it was a long time ago, and things were not going so well for you in your wastewater system. So at that time, the DEM gave you a consent agreement, and that required you to do a lot of upgrades to the wastewater system. So at that time, the best option was selected to go design, build, operate. Because of all those capital improvements that you had to do, that made the most sense at that time. And so at that time, you did not only a large capital program improvement, but then you also procured the services of the operating company. So this time now, and that was back in 2008, and that was awarded in 2009. And so now here we are, we move forward, and you see that we're in December of 2019 right now. And so now it's time for you to think about what will we do next. And those were the three options that we just talked about at the beginning. So the goal is to move into your next phase by October of 2020. So that's not so far away.
Excuse me, can I interrupt for a second?
Absolutely.
There was also two other questions that I've been asking from the beginning.
Yes, sir.
One of them is Narragansett Bay Commission taking over the Riverside
Yes.
sewer plant, and what would be, which I saw on there, but
Yeah.
the question of Barrington
Yes.
contributing more, that was also looked into.
Yes,
correct?
yes, sir. Well, that's what we call wholesale agreements. So that's what I was saying, and I will get to those in just a couple of slides, if that's okay. Sure. And then if you have further questions, we can certainly address those then. So just a quick overview of the city's wastewater components, just so you understand. So you have a wastewater pollution control facility. It's a 6.7 MGD average daily flow with 14.2 million gallons per day peak daily flow. The East Providence portion of the system that flows to the plant includes 27 sewer pump stations and 133 miles of sewer, as well as over 3,200 manholes. And then there's a portion of your system that goes to Narragansett Bay Commission, and that's 43 miles of sewer and more than 1,000 sewer manholes. So just so you have an understanding that this is a very large network that you're responsible for. This slide here is to show you that these are the different components of your $14 million budget for the wastewater system that we just talked about. So, and of this, we're talking about the 36% of the budget that's covered by the Suez contract right now. 25% of your contract of that budget goes to Narragansett Bay Commission, and that will continue. And so, you know, these numbers change as things change, as rates increase. But that's just so you understand the different pieces of the pie that we're talking about. So I did want to remind us all that, you know, you're under legal requirements. So, you know, it's a serious matter, the operation of the wastewater system. And so you have a lot of permit requirements to meet. It's very regulated. You have very certified and trained operators that operate both the treatment plant, pump stations, and collection systems. And so this next slide shows you how many staff are needed to do that. And I'm sorry, it's a little hard to read, but the bottom line is that this is what is approved by the Rhode Island DEM right now. And so you're required to have 21 people, and this shows you all the different levels of certifications that they're required to have and the different trainings that they're required to have. So the existing Suez contract, it does meet all the requirements of the Rhode Island DEM permit right now. And they are taking care of all things, the collection system, the 27 pump stations, the sludge hauling and disposal, and the industrial pretreatment program. So there's a lot of different things that are currently handled under this contract. And this contract expires in April of 2020. So the work that we were doing was the wholesale service review is one piece. We also looked at benchmarking to see that you guys wanted to understand, how does this fit in? What we're paying right now, how does that measure up? How does it measure up to industry standards? We also did an estimation of what it would cost for the city to now operate your systems, for the city to take it back. And then we did more of a detailed staffing analysis. So with that, the wholesale agreements. The first agreement I'll talk about is the one that you have with Barrington. So the Barrington flow goes to your plant. The entire community of Barrington goes to your plant. And this agreement dates back to 1973. It includes a 10% administrative fee. Barrington pays proportional share of treatment and O&M and repair and replacement costs. Barrington constructed the interceptor from their town to your treatment plant, and they include the cost sharing of the O&M and debt service. And everything is proportioned based on the volume of the flow coming from Barrington to you. So this is an industry standard. It's a good agreement that you have. And in the future, you can consider other things like capital improvements that will be needed in the future at the wastewater plant. You do have some issues with H2S, which is hydrogen sulfide corrosion at your plant. So there'll be things that you'll want to think about as you move to the future. Some things that we work with other communities on are impact fees in terms of if there are high different parameters such as H2S that are impacting, your facility different than what the wastewater from East Providence does. So Barrington is having a different impact. Then you can think about, maybe doing something different in the future. But for today, for right now, it's a very appropriate agreement, and it's an industry standard, I would say. That's the Barrington wholesale agreement. So the Narragansett Bay Commission wholesale agreement. So this agreement, this is from the part of your system, and it's a smaller piece of your system that actually goes to Narragansett. And so Narragansett, it's a much bigger system. It's a much different operation that they have for Narragansett Bay. So it's a much more expensive system that they're running. So I know it's hard because you have, the bigger flow is less money that goes to your East Providence, whereas the smaller flow that goes to Narragansett costs you a lot more money. But it's because it's a different system. But don't feel like it's the same price that, everybody's charged equally. And that's all determined by the Rhode Island Public Utilities Commission. So it goes through a very rigorous process in terms of setting those rates. And those two are, industry standard and appropriate and determined by the PUC. And there will be future rate increases for Narragansett, as there will be for East Providence. So I think I told you most of these things. So the cost that Barrington pays East Providence is roughly $1.7 million. And the cost that East Providence is paying Narragansett is roughly $3.2 million. And so that was the difference that I was talking about. But again, they're very much, calculated costs based on actual expenses and costs to operate. Did that answer your questions on the wholesale agreements? Or you want to wait till the end?
I'll wait till the end.
Okay.
So what I'm going to go through now, we took a sort of a deep dive into what it would cost the city to take over the plant. We looked at historically the way it operates. We looked at some industry benchmarks. We took the city's actual hourly rates and when we came up with our numbers. And then we did a historic escalation on things like materials and supplies, basically everything you need to actually run the plant. One of the first things we did to make sure we were actually using the right numbers is we had some of our staff go down to the plant, interview the existing staff to come and sort of do a staffing analysis. Do we need every position, that kind of thing. Could we cut here? Do we actually, need more people in the pump stations? And we looked at two different things. We looked at the option of, having the city employees run everything, the treatment plant and the collection systems. And then we looked at having them run the treatment plant, but using some subcontractors for some of that work. Oftentimes, that's a little bit more cost effective. So what this table shows that right now there are 21 positions with some subcontracts, and pretty much it comes out to about the same thing. What they're doing, they're very efficient. They don't have more staff than they need, and they've got good subcontracts going, so we wouldn't change that. So this slide is basically a summary of costs. We have two scenarios, the two I just talked about, the city operating everything and the city operating with some of their collection system work subcontracted out. We went through labor. These are some of the things we estimated: labor, overtime, benefits, chemicals. Now, labor, we used actual city rates. We did a 10% overtime estimate. We calculated about 55% for benefits. Now, when we get to things like chemicals, sludge disposal, utilities, we didn't have a basis for these numbers, so we used numbers that Suez currently uses from their annual reports to sort of streamline it so we could compare apples to apples. We just made the assumption that moving for this year, for the comparison purposes, that would be the same. We looked at some, tech and administrative support, and what a major difference between these two numbers is, in scenario 1, we wouldn't have as many outside contractors, so we estimated about $400,000 for that. And under scenario 2, we bumped that number up to $750,000 to account for those subcontractors to do that collection system work. So this is the slide. This is the bottom line. We look at 4 different options. We have the price for your existing Suez contract. Scenario 1, which looks at the city operating both the collection system and the treatment plant. Scenario 2, with the collection system contracted out. And then that last scenario is, what if we went back out to bid again? What would those numbers look like? And the thing that we need to remember, or what we need to understand, is that in our experience working with different communities and what we've seen in the industry, those prices don't usually come back lower. They usually come out 20 to 30% higher. So yes, there is that option to go out to RFP, but most likely the numbers would not be lower. So if you look at the 4 options, I guess, scenarios 2 and 3, we do show a potential cost savings there. Pros and cons. Like with any of these options, there are some pros and there are some cons. Pros of resuming city operation, we do see that you have the potential for a cost savings. We would not know off the top of our head what would happen if we went out to RFP, just that we would expect a cost increase. And the city would have control of their own assets again, which is something they haven't had for 10 years. Some cons, staffing. Right now, staff, they're not city employees, and these are really qualified technical people. So that's something that would have to be considered, hiring back certain people. Some of them may come, some of them might not, so that's something to consider. And then taking this back, you have a huge increased risk. You just have to remember, you're responsible for your permits, stuff like that you're not responsible for right now. So there's that change. You are now responsible for all your customer complaints 24 hours a day. And the city's capital improvement funding process. Right now in Suez's existing contract, there's money for certain capital improvements to be done. So those would now come back and all be the responsibility of the city to take care of, routine maintenance, that kind of stuff. That being said, you have to remember there is a cost savings, so it's a balance. And then there are some additional cost considerations for the first year, things like assets, rolling stock, trucks, stuff that you do not own anymore. So that's just things you have to think about if you take this back over again. And then there for sure is a transition period. So during that transition period, there would be some duplicate costs between what Suez does right now and then, duplicate staff and timing, et cetera. So we have 2 schedules here, this slide and the one following it, and what these do is break down a little bit your next steps if you go out to RFP or if you resume city operation. So looking right now, these are pretty tight timelines, just so you guys are all aware. You would have to extend Suez's existing contract for at least several months, ideally to October, and start that transition period. These are not things that happen overnight, so it's something that does take a while. Hiring, Suez is responsible for an exit transition plan in their current contract, so that's something that they have 6 months to do. and then with the goal that the plant would be turned over to the city October 2020. And a different schedule would be if this city decided to go out to RFP, we would need to start preparing RFPs, do the proposal thing with that same goal of next fall, 2020. So it's the same timeline, just a different set of things that would need to get done. That's it.
So I have a few questions, and I want to kind of just walk through the questions that the council had asked from the beginning. And this is such an important issue that I feel that we should revisit some of those questions. And this is a great presentation and good information, but I just want to re-educate the public as to why and how we got here. So one of the questions, for example, is Barrington paying their fair share, correct? And what the company Arcadis has found out is that they are according to industry standards, correct? Mm-hmm. Okay. The second question, would it be beneficial for the city to run our own plant with our own employees, correct? With our own employees. And what you're saying is that there could be some cost savings, but the overall picture doesn't seem to have cost savings when you factor in vehicles, transition period, benefits, and everything that goes along with running your own plant with your own employees, correct? Am I hearing that correct?
I think that there is a cost savings, really. I think that we're conservative because we know what the market trends are, so that we're kind of nervous to answer that question until we open the envelopes. I mean, maybe your RFP would be a magical year and you would somehow get a lower number. It could happen. I don't know. I don't think it would.
What would that cost savings translate into numbers, dollars?
So what we had shown on the slide was we have a range of savings there, but basically roughly in the $300,000 range. So you're really balancing the savings with the risk. So now you reassume the risk of meeting your permits, of maintaining your systems, and so you're balancing that versus your cost savings.
So the potential savings is roughly around $300,000 in any scenario, really. That's what you're looking at. That's what we would be looking at as a city in savings.
That 30%, the 20 to 30% higher, that's not factored into that $300,000 number.
Right. So it could be a bigger savings. That's why I'm saying we're being conservative. Thank you, Amy.
Okay. And then the other option of sticking with Suez, I understand that the a new contract for the next 10 years, that would be higher, obviously, than the previous contract because of just expenses and everything else that goes with it. But is there, in the work that you've done, is there a potential for cost savings if it did go out to RFP? Like, do you look at other companies in the industry that would be able to do the same job for less?
So that's what we were looking at when we gave you that 20 to 30% higher cost estimate. Okay. That is actually what we're seeing in the industry right now. Now that fluctuates. So, it all depends. They're companies, they make their decisions, based on current market conditions and whatever else they got going on.
And one of my last two questions, you did mention that Barrington can pay for capital improvement projects down the road if we negotiate with them?
Yes.
And how would that work? Because one of my concerns for Riverside, that sewer plant, I would like to see those main, the first tanks capped off because there's a constant issue with sewer smells, and I think that would really reduce that and fix that problem. So how would that factor in?
The first thing you would need to do are some studies to show that that what we think is true is true. So you would be measuring hydrogen sulfide, other parameters over time, and so you would need to gather data, which actually you may have some data already. So you would, and then you would do calculations to determine then what portion of the capital improvement is due to their accelerated deterioration of your plant. So those are the studies that you would do, and then you would justify the costs.
Or the other option would be, am I correct by saying, negotiating that into a capital improvement projects with whichever company you would sign a contract with?
So if the city takes it back, either way, the city is doing those capital improvements on its own.
Okay.
That's because the contract that we're talking about to run the plant is only an operating contract. So no capital improvements are anticipated in it right now.
And then my last question, does your company recommend one of these options, or this is just the facts that you present?
We just present the facts because the matter of risk is really one for you to consider.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, did you want to add anything?
I did, yes, thank you. So that gives the council a glimpse or an understanding of the different options we have on the table. And I think I just want to clarify that in the savings projected, if we take it back, those savings would be those savings are based on the existing cost of operating the plant. So it doesn't take into account the 30%, projected 20 to 30% increase that we could face with a new contract. But that being said, we also will have to decide if we're going to go out to RFP, we would have to hire somebody like Arcadis to prepare the RFP. It's a very complex RFP, and that has a cost also. I mean, that's something that would cost us close to $200,000 for them to put together the RFP to go out and to manage the whole process. We don't have the capability of managing that whole RFP process in-house. It'd have to be done by experts. The other thing that we have to look at, too, is if we decide we're going to take it back, we would have to hire someone like Arcadis to help us manage taking back the operation of the plant, to help with that first transition phase. Even though written into the contract, Suez currently has a provision that they have to help us transition. They're supposed to put a plan together for us to transition if we want to take over, or if somebody else is going to come in and take over. That's part of their contract. But we would have to have somebody, almost like an owner's project manager, helping us to facilitate that on our end. So that's something that we need to decide. I'll be glad to, at some point, sit down with a couple of council members who want to discuss what you feel, or if you guys want to discuss it here and give us your opinion, and then we can decide what direction we're going to go in.
It's my opinion that this process should be done, whether it be in special session, but it should be done publicly, because I would like to really educate the public and show them the timeline as to how, in the end, if we do need to raise sewer rates, at least they know how we got to that point. So that's just my opinion.
Mr. President.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Mr. President. No, please. Well, I just have two. I wanted to ask Arcadis first. Is that pronounced correctly, Arcadis?
Yes.
First of all, thank you. We get a lot of presentations, and a lot of them are lengthy and a lot of bureaucracy, and this was very concise. The facts were there. It was very clear, and you did a nice job. Of course, we paid you for it, so, but thank you for the report. The $330,000 or so savings that you said, if we were to take this back, approximately. Now, that does not account for new vehicles and equipment, correct, that we would have to purchase?
That's correct. You want to explain that?
Yeah. It does not, but those are one-time costs. So, and there's different things you can do. You can lease vehicles. There will be some first-year costs, but I wouldn't expect them for years 2 through 9 or 2 through wherever. So it's just during that transition period. And then keep in mind, if you went out to RFP and say a different company took over, you'd be paying that cost anyway, because they have to now buy vehicles, because Suez currently owns these.
It would be built in the cost.
It would be built in, but,
right.
But yeah, you sort of have to do a vehicle transition no matter what. It's just whether or not it's something.
Now, the current vehicles, who is responsible as they break down or need to be repaired or replaced?
Right. So, 10 years ago, Suez purchased your vehicles for a fee, and then there is some sort of, when they do the transition, they'll say what they're valued at now. There'll be some sort of cost, I guess.
Yeah, accounting
of that. But I have to say, a lot of those vehicles, I mean, that was 10 years ago, and some of them were very old at that point, and I do know right now a majority of their vehicles are leased.
And is Suez covering that?
That's right, yep.
Mm-hmm. And finally, 10 years ago, I don't know this, so I don't know if you do, or the mayor, but 10 years ago, did the plant come under the supervision of DPW in East Providence? Who was the supervising manager?
Yeah, DPW.
DPW, and that would happen again?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
May I ask a couple, Mr. President? Having read through the contract, one of the things that I noticed is that we went with a design build operate option last time. Also, if I'm not mistaken, it was a fixed price bidding process by which we chose essentially the lowest price technically acceptable proposer, offeror. I think in general, over the course of the 10 years, the Suez contract has served the city well. I know that there are complaints with regard to odor and things like that. But certainly if you look at the numbers from, where we were at in terms of being cited by the state to where we are now, I think they've done a good job. Going back to that process or that thinking that brought us to the design, build, operate concept, it's my understanding that's inherently a risky proposition for the contractor, the vendor, right? Because they have to do the design, they have to do the build. They don't really know what it's going to cost, but yet they're bidding a fixed price. So I wonder if you have a sense, and I know I'm asking you for conjecture at this point, but how much of the risk of the design and build do you think was kind of squeezed into the back end of the operations and maintenance with regard to kind of recovering costs once the construction was done?
So we don't know exactly what the profit is in their contract, but we can back into it and kind of guess. We feel that you have a very fair contract. Okay. So I would say then that I don't think a lot went into that in terms of loading the operating fee. So I think you had a pretty fair price.
My other question is, I note with if we exercise the renewal term for the next 10 years, I note that there's a provision in the contract that says that Suez reserves the right to renegotiate their rates before they accept the option. Presumably that's a bilateral option. Why would, if they have that option to renegotiate their rates, why would they, or would they be motivated at all to give us any different pricing than, say, the market would by way of an RFP?
Right, that's a business decision. And so I'm not privy to, what
they're going to do.
What their books look like, and
I'm just trying to get free advice out of you. You know, I mean, you're here, so.
So yeah, and that's why we're conservative with how we advise.
Okay, I think that's it for my questions, sir. Thank you.
Any further questions from the council at this time? If not, appreciate your time and coming here this evening to speak on behalf of this. Thank you very much.
Can I just clear something up for the councilman, too? Councilman, just so the council fully understands and the public, we went out to bond, so a lot of the cost of the build, we're still paying for. It's part of the debt service with that plant. So
it's 30% of your pie.
30% of our debt to operate the plant is the debt that we're still paying on that.
Do you know right, certainly understand that. My concern was Suez and the other offerors, and I don't know how many there were at the time, would be bidding for a fixed price situation, so they would be incentivized to get the cost as low as possible. Right. So if the costs were increased over what they actually filled, that bid, they would have to eat it. So I was just wondering how much, if there was a sense for how much they backed in. So, thank you.
On that bond question, how many years left on that bond? Do you know?
It was 25. Was it 25? I'd have to look that up.
10.
It was 25.
I think it was 25.
10.
Steve, was that 25 year?
It started in 2010. There were 3 of them, 2010, 11, 12.
And were they 20 or 25 year? 20-year bonds.
20. Okay.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Madam Clerk, so we may proceed in the order that we have. Thank you. Yes.
The next item, we're going a little out of order. You'll find that under 9, Roman numeral 9, mayoral appointments requiring council approval. It's letter A, John Braga, Zoning Board, replacing the unexpired term of Antonio Cunha. The term would be December 18th, 2019.
Mr. Furtado?
Mr. President.
Good evening.
Good evening. So this appointment is just, it's an interim appointment. It's just filling the unexpired term of Mr. Cunha, who recently stepped down. And Mr. Braga has served, I believe, 13 years on the zoning board until recently. So this would be for the at-large appointment. And he's actually here tonight. He has extensive experience both in real estate and then as a member of the board. But if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Or if you'd like to ask him, he's here too.
I have none, Mr. President. Just for council's edification, I'd like to point out that I had the opportunity to speak with Mr. Braga over the weekend. Primarily, I was concerned about, well, I'll recall, the voting that took place with regard to the expansion of the Cumberland Farms property in that store. Mm-hmm. So I asked Mr. Braga about, the thinking on the vote that went on at the time. He explained to me that what they were trying to do was strike the best deal for the residents and Cumberland Farms. It wasn't. I was concerned that there was a no vote, potentially maybe for some political reasons, whatever. He explained to me that what they were trying to do was strike the best deal for everybody involved. They had asked Cumberland Farms to go back and maybe take another look at their design. Cumberland Farms was not willing to do that and instead asked the zoning board to vote as is, so that they voted as is. So following that conversation, I felt fairly assured that he was looking out for the best interests of everybody involved, so that allayed my concerns. So,
any other questions from the council? All right, all right, Madam Clerk, may we have a roll call vote on this, please?
So, do we need a motion? So,
I'm
if
sorry.
there's a motion required, I'll move to approve the appointment.
I'm sorry.
I'll second.
Okay. With that being said, we have a motion in 2 seconds.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morato.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
And Council President Brito.
Aye. Thank you for that
Thank you.
explanation. So we may proceed back on order, or in order, I should say, leaving off for the next item docket, which will be public comment, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct,
Now,
Mr.
if I looked at the list here, we have quite a few people up here for public comment. If you could just be conscientious that there is a three-minute limit on public comment. I'm not going to sit here and time anyone. Just be respectful, not only to the council, but for the person after you as well, with your 3 minutes. First person, please.
The first person is Rita Faliguera, and the topic is Grassy Plains Playground.
I want to thank you. Good evening,
Good
ladies
evening.
and gentlemen of the council. And I want to apologize to Bob Rodricks, because when I called Bobby the other night, you were the first one I called, and I was angry, and I felt blindsided. It was a personal affront. I've lived in my house at the corner of Tanglewood Drive in Glen for 44 years. And to read in the Post what is happening a stone's throw away from me, it was definitely blindsided.
No offense taken. I enjoyed the conversation.
Well, I'm Sicilian, so it goes with the territory. So Having said that, I would like to request that that this be put back on the docket, and this time, the entire people who are directly affected by this proposal be included. Because I've been living there for a long time, was part of the Democratic City Committee for a long time, been involved, haven't kept a low profile. I know how things work. And I don't believe that we were forgotten about. I think that this was by design, okay? And I feel that the council was given half a glass of information and not the full glass. Because had the full glass been offered, we would have been, somebody could have just knocked on one door. That's all it would have taken, and the whole neighborhood would have known. But that didn't happen. And I don't know if anybody has seen the survey that was done, the people who are behind this. The number one thing was, and I'll see if I can read this without my glasses, would like to suggest including Tanglewood Drive and Glen Avenue if you plan to make upgrades and changes to the park, as it would impact the neighbors of the west side of the park as well. Recommend an abundance of parking of vehicles on Estrell Drive. So that was under suggestions. That was number one. Did it happen? No, it didn't. So the question begs, why didn't it happen? Well, possibly because for over 20 years, I've been chasing the original material on that grant, the application and the grant as it was written to construct the Grassy Plains Playground. Okay? And what a lot of people I found on Facebook didn't know is that we did not buy a house on the playground. The houses were there, and the playground was built. And at the time that this was a proposal, none of the people were for it. Okay? No one. Because if you've been there, and I know you all have, okay, you can see that it's impossible to police. You can't see it from Grassy Plain. You can go down Tanglewood, go into the cul-de-sac. You can't see anything, okay? It was a beautiful playground. 149 children were signed up to register at that playground when the city used to do neighborhood playgrounds, and it was a wonderful thing. It was great for the kids. It was great for the neighborhood. It was wonderful. The city stopped it. Why? I don't know, but they did. And in the 40-plus years, we can ask ourselves, have the children, youth of today, become more respectful of private property, public property? Has vandalism gone down? Mr. Moriarty, you're a police officer. I'm sure you would agree with me. That's not the case. I have called the police department a number of times. ATVs, dirt bikes, not street legal, not licensed. I mean, they go down there and they tear everything up, okay? They've set the playground on fire. The original jungle gym was made out of wood. That was set on fire. Another one was constructed. There's all broken glass in the sand around there. A few things that I thought the kids did, and I later found out it was the city who did it. But that'll be addressed at a later point. So I'd like to have the people on Glen and Tanglewood included, as we should. We live there. And I think to not include us was an affront. And is there a master plan on this grant that was written?
Through a chair, if I can just respond real quickly.
Yes, please.
So, Rita,
yes.
We spoke Saturday. I was trying to fix a water leak, if you remember.
Yep.
I did fix it, actually. And I do agree with you. So what I'm hearing is that there are residents who are in favor of revitalizing that park that's been run down and, not being used properly. And it's a great piece of land. It's huge.
Yeah.
And then there are residents on the other side who you're speaking on their behalf, it would appear, on Tanglewood, as far as not wanting park there, buffer zones, parking. There's a lot of concerns that need to be addressed.
Well,
what I'm going to propose,
okay,
it's that when these plans get put forward from our planning department, that both sides, I would like to conduct meetings with the neighborhood.
We would love to.
And I would like to hear everyone's input and have an input and a voice, regardless of what the plan is, just so everyone's involved. Everyone lives in that community, whether they want to use it or their properties abut to it. That's my plan with this project. And I hear your concerns, and I've also heard the concerns of those that want to use it.
Right.
And we're also looking into that other, that passive use from 1973, what the results are of that, and I'm going to get you an answer for that too, and that's going to determine how we're going to move forward from that.
If I could just say, I'm not against improving it. What I have been against since day one is organized sports. And I immediately questioned the definition of the term active. So, in my opinion, okay, as a non-attorney, my opinion of active is a pickup game of soccer, a pickup game of football, a pickup game of baseball, some kids having a pickup game of hoops. That's active. I have a problem with organized, and I'll tell you why. And I told a few of you.
If you could just make this quick, that way, because we do have 10 other people
There was
after
a family
you.
with twins and a toddler. And Johnny was late for T-ball, and Mommy was speeding, and she hit the dog. Could have easily been a child. That street was not built for that kind of traffic. And so we're not, the majority of us are not against using beautifying it, having it used. We're not against that. We are against Johnny having T-ball, soccer games, football games in a neighborhood that was never designed to host those kind of activities. So, and I have other people who are willing to speak. And what I've done is I've done talking points so that we're not repeating ourselves.
Thank you.
Also, just want to add that this is not going to happen overnight, so there's going to be a lot of discussion and plannings ahead the next months. So, as I said, I do want to plan community meetings, and I want to get everyone involved, every stakeholder involved. So,
good, because like I said, up until now, I think we were purposely left out, which is really offensive.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next person, please.
Next person to speak on this topic is Olivia Gomes.
Me?
Next person, Olivia Gomes.
Olivia Gomes?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking to me. Get old. Stop.
Olivia Gomes.
She's skipping.
Okay.
Oh, she's skipping? Okay.
Thank you.
No problem.
Okay.
Lynn Clark. Hi, Lynn.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I just wanted to let you know that I've actually lived on Tanglewood since 1969, before the park was built. And my parents and the other neighbors always had some concerns about the park. They were always invited. There was a lot of meetings that everybody was invited to. I think why they decided that it would be okay was that it was going to be in the summer a recreation center for the kids, and it was also going to be a place where the neighbors could come. They had 2 tennis courts. They had a basketball court. They had baseball for the kids just to have pickup games. And kids would come down on their bikes, or parents would just sometimes leave them off. There was never a parking issue, because it was such a neighborhood place. And it was a place that a lot of people could come to do a lot of different things. So that's why people were okay with that. And for some reason, I guess, as things deteriorated, there was no more money, and the park did go down. One of the things that we've been concerned about on our street is that there were a few times that people started to try to have some organized sports down there. And what would happen is that the parking was really bad. They'd be coming all the way down the street, parking. Glenn was parked on both sides. Nobody could get through. If there was ever something where, a fire truck had to get through, it could not happen. They were parking around the corner. It was just really bad. And they were also speeding up and down the street, in case they were late to the game or whatever. They just had no conception that it was a neighborhood, that people should, be more careful. So I think, that's a lot of our concerns. And we also, one of the things I was also concerned about last year is that it looked like people from the city were doing some assessing, and in the woods there were all these little pink ribbons all over the trees, and they were coming all the way down the woods. Even I live in the middle of Tanglewood. It was even in the back of my house, and people were talking about that. There was a possibility that they were talking about knocking down the woods to put soccer fields. So that, that has been a concern of ours for quite some time, and it's just not a good neighborhood to, have all that kind of traffic. So, thank you.
Thank you. Next person, please.
Next person is Susan Dunnington, Warren Avenue congestion.
There are other people here for this.
Do you want to do that? Okay. Okay. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
Next is Stephen Donahue to speak on the same subject.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
I live on Tanglewood Drive. I've lived there for over 20 years, and I can remember as a young kid on how the playground was built and designed. It was a very nice playground. Matter of fact, I liked it so much when I was a young kid. That was the main reason why I moved over there. I lived on Pawtucket Avenue, which was very busy, and I have 3 young children at the time, and we moved over there. They couldn't wait for the end of the school year to get on the playground, to get involved with the recreation stuff that was going on down there. There was baseball with the kids in the neighborhood. My son was the youngest out of the bunch, and they all included him. My dog used to get down there and play with the council and all that other stuff. They'd bring him back. But besides that, the whole reason we moved there was, like I said, was for the playground. Well, as time went on, it came into despair. I mean, I used to have to call up and ask why the grass wasn't cut. They would only cut certain parts because it was so people drove by. It didn't look like it was in despair, but it was. And, like, the basketball courts were always in top shape when I moved there. There was 2 tennis courts that were beautiful with benches outside. There was places where you could sit in the playground, and they took the tennis courts down. One of the basketball courts that were there, they pulled the netting out and the pipes out, and they left one that's not even a real basketball court, and some of the kids tried to play down there. They had a beautiful ice rink that the fire department used to come and flood. They took the valve out of there because they didn't want to do it anymore. They just stopped disappearing it after the fact that they didn't like in 20 years ago when we moved there, because they wanted to put a cell tower back there and the neighborhood fought it. So the whole reason is they just wanted to, they wanted what they wanted. There was talks they wanted to put soccer fields back then, and the neighborhood did not want it. Now, there used to be somewhat of a soccer field in there. The little H-frame was there so you could play soccer, and if you wanted to play football, there used to be a volleyball court with the net and all that stuff. The soccer didn't have a net, and the ball field and everything. It looked beautiful, but now it's a mess. I mean, I'm not going to stand here and blame the city or the workers or anything. It's just they just want to put what they want there, and the neighborhood doesn't want it. There's no room to park. Estrella, there's definitely no room to park, and you're trying to shove something down people's throats that it's not going to happen in the neighborhood. And you really need to take a good look at the neighborhood to figure out how you think you're going to put soccer fields back there where there's nowhere to park. When the ball fields, where the kids used to play in the spring, they'd be down there practicing, they'd park in front of my driveway. I'd say, can you move, please? And they'd move so I could back out, and then they'd park in front of the driveway again. I mean, it's not a place to do what you think you want to do. As a beautiful park, it'd be great, because all the neighborhood would love it. I mean, all the neighborhood. You got all the back streets and everything that will come there, but they're not coming there now because it's a mess. Fix it up nice, that would be great. Try to make a glorified soccer complex, it's not good. It really isn't. And what you're doing is you're hurting the people in the neighborhood that live there for something that eventually is going to die anyways. You need to put it back as a park and make it look nice.
And that's what I'm hearing from both sides. It's not necessarily a soccer field. It's revitalizing that area.
If you revitalize that park, that'd be awesome. Everybody in the whole part of that neighborhood would love it. They really would. But to try to put organized sports back there, forget it. There's no room for it. There really isn't. If you think you're going to put a parking lot down there, you guys may go take a look, because guess what? It's all water right now. You'd be lucky if your car's not sunk by the end of the soccer game. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next person, please.
Next person on this subject is Tim McAuliffe.
Good evening. Thanks for giving us some time to voice our concerns. I'm Tim McAuliffe. I live at 30 Tanglewood Drive. I just reiterate some of the things that were already said. I won't reiterate what's been already said, but what I would like to say is there's already been some planning. We don't know what you're planning. And that's the first order of business. I don't care how far along it's gone. I think you need to open the window and let us see what the range of the discussion is, and then we're happy to participate.
As far as I know, Mr. McCullen, when I met with the planning director, the plans that were shown to me were like at least 10 or not, if not more, old. I guess this process has been in the works for a while. They just never got to it. The plan didn't include soccer fields from what I saw. And before I voted for the grant matching, a couple of concerns that I did point out. One was parking. And I did point out those wetland areas and where you're going to put it. And also a buffer zone between Tanglewood and the park, and to also close, I guess, as a footpath path to close that, to eliminate the parking on Tanglewood. This is at the very beginning stages of any planning. It hasn't even gone out to a design or anything.
Well,
so we're still, and this is why I said I want to include both sides when they do get that architect and get to that stage. We need to have input from both sides. And what I'm hearing tonight, and even the neighbors that reached out to me in January, and in the second meeting after that, it's not necessarily soccer fields. It's just revitalizing that area so it can be reused, as what I'm hearing, the way it was intended for. So,
well, personally, I think that if you're going out and hiring somebody and then you're going to invite us to participate, you're a little bit late with the invitation. We'd like to be involved early on so that we can participate in what the scope of the project is going to be.
So that process, from what I understand, includes feedback from the residents, if I'm correct, before it goes into planning. So they get what the idea of what they charged with. You know, this is what we want to see, and then they develop a plan, and then there's room for improvement and changes and such. That's how I understand the process works. Not here's the plan, here you go. I think they feedback. Well, is that a Christmas song?
Backpack's talking.
From the feedback, I guess the initial stages is that I could be wrong on this, and I will have to find out, is that they get the feedback from the neighbors as to what do they want to see, and then go forward with a design plan.
Well,
so I'm hoping that I'm accurate on that, but I'm on this, and I will look into this. So,
I think you control the process. The city controls the process. So what I'm suggesting is you're in control of the process. We're asking you to include us at the earliest moment, and I think that's before you hire a design firm, because we want to feed that information into the design. So parking, land usage, soccer fields, you're going to turn it into soccer fields. I question, what other values does the city put on that land? It's open space, it's wildlife habitat, it's, part of contiguous, undeveloped land in the city. There's not a tremendous amount of it. It's a scarce resource. I think those kinds of things need to be considered in the process. And I think one of your biggest wildlife concerns is mosquitoes.
So after
perhaps
the first,
it would be, perhaps you could call it Triple E Field.
So after the first of the year, I will start having community meetings scheduled. I will be in touch with Rita, and either I pass out a flyer to all the residents on Tanglewood and the surrounding community. I advertise it here. I advertise it on different, web pages, and we'll get this going as far as hearing concerns. All right.
I appreciate that. I just want to say that when the flags went up in the back in the backwoods. Within a month, I was down talking to the planning department about, what's the plan? I came back a year after that. Well, that's pretty much, gone away. So I was very surprised to see it in the paper, and I look forward to your invitation to participate in the discussion.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Morano, may I ask, when you have that community meeting, I know I'm not the Ward 4 councilman, but I grew up on Ferncrest Drive from 1981 to 1993 and spent half my life at that park. And it was in pretty rough shape, as I recall, running around there as a kid. It was always cracks, weeds growing up through the basketball courts, et cetera, even back then. So I'd very much like to participate in that, if I could.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you.
To add to that, Mr. President, may I?
Sure.
I'd like to take that a step, I don't know if it's further or a little differently. I think that a public workshop should be held here. I mean, it can be neighborhood walkthroughs, that's fine, but one of the things that I've always done, and I campaigned on doing, was these are East Providence issues. I don't want to see us get parochial in nature. We're all concerned about open space and recreation. And when you have a little neighborhood meeting, the law says only 2 council persons can be there. Can't have a majority. And I have a problem with that law. I've even been told by the Attorney General's office that it may not be that strict, but I also represent as a council person at large, so I do represent citywide, and I would love to be there also. And further, I think I know Grassy Plains as well as anybody. I was a councilor there 1972, 73, 74. I worked there with the 175 kids a day that Rita talks about. Some days we had more than that, 300. And you have to be careful when you say organized, not organized, because it was organized then. It was just playground activities. We had baseball, basketball, tennis. Those tennis courts were great that were there. Tennis was at its prime then. That was the Jimmy Connors era, and everybody was playing tennis almost around the clock. You couldn't get space there. So this is a large tract of land in East Providence that have been kind of forgotten about for a while. Parking's the issue. Parking's the issue at all our fields. That's why we voted also to put some parking for the neighbors at the Riverside Rec Field, which will be behind the junior high, the middle school, because those neighbors, you know what that's like when there's a game there. So I would hope that we have as many public meetings as possible. I don't care if we have 10 of them, but I'd like to see the bulk of them be as part of a city council meeting where we have a workshop and we talk about plans and the public can speak. But, when you go to a hall in the neighborhood and you just talk to a few people, it doesn't, to me, it's not indicative of representation of all of East Providence. So I
appreciate that, Councilman Rodrigues, but I will still have a community meeting. I like to be part of this process. I do not want to be cut out of this process. Well, you'd be part of it as I did with Riverside Square. I do not want to be cut out. I am listening to my constituents, and I will have this meeting in January, and anyone is welcome.
Except some of us.
Thank you. Next person, please.
The next person is Mike Javery, speaking on the same topic, Grassy Plains Playground.
Mr. Javery here? No? Next person, please.
Okay. Next person is Denise Morell, speaking on Grassy Plains Playground.
47 Tanglewood, but...
Can you step up to the podium, please, just so we all can hear you with the mic? And so for all the lovely people at home can see your, and just so all the lovely people at home can see your beautiful face.
You're the organizer of the sweater contest. That's great. I live at 47 Tanglewood Drive, and I really do. That's the reason I was going to stay there. Is I really concur with my neighbors, particularly Tim spoke very well concerning the problems, and frankly, I just soon cede my time to someone who might have new information for you. The traffic concerns are paramount, and frankly, I've lived there 13 years, and I would love to see it as a park. a park that, we could all enjoy with chairs and things like that. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next person, please.
Actually, that is all for Grassy Plains Playground. We can go back to Susan Dennington with the Warren Avenue congestion.
Please step up to the podium.
Mr. President, can I ask, because Mrs. Donington sent us an image to be broadcast up on the screen, I wonder if we could pull that up? Just a map, so we can see the area she's
Google
talking
map,
about.
I don't have it.
Thank you.
No, we have it. They'll be put up.
We have it.
Oh.
They'll be.
Oh, okay. Sorry, that's okay. I'm Susan Dunnington. I live on 35 Bright Ridge Ave. Bright Ridge Ave. And I want to talk to the council about just an issue that I feel needs to be addressed or the council needs to be aware of. I initially came to a zoning board meeting in November. Mr. Paiva Insurance is opening or building a new building at the end of corner of Bright Ridge and Warren Ave, which is a gorgeous building, and I have no problems with the building at all. What I just feel needs to be addressed is the traffic situation along Warren Ave, especially that area, and turning into and out of Bright Ridge Ave. The additional building is going to, and traffic coming in and out of the parking lot, is just going to make it even more congested. And right now, there are a couple of issues that I see. I live on Bright Ridge, not thinking that it's a rural area by any means. I know that it's a busy area, and I have no problems with that at all. Right now, we have traffic parking, though, on both sides of Bright Ridge Ave, which makes it very hard for any car or school bus or vehicle to get down any time of day. That's any time of day, any time of night. One suggestion that I would have was to have just parking on one side of Bright Ridge Ave versus on both sides. The other issue that I have that I want to point out to folks is trying to pull off of Bright Ridge Ave onto Warren Ave, either turning left or turning right. If there's cars parked along Warren Ave, which they're allowed to do right now, immediately after on both sides of Bright Ridge, you can't see around them to see into the traffic, and to try to pull out, it involves inching yourself out a little bit. And the issues can be a couple of things. Folks coming off of 195, coming down Warren Ave, can get backed up with people waiting to turn left to get on to 195 from Warren Ave. And there's really only one lane and then a parking lane kind of along the side of Warren Ave that, myself included, use as a second lane when the traffic is backed up and we don't want to wait behind all the cars backed up trying to turn left onto 195 heading toward Barrington in that direction. I know that Warren Ave is listed as one of the opportunity zones in East Providence, which I think is fabulous. There's a lot of empty spaces on Warren Ave. It has potential to be an incredible street with a lot going on. I think it would behoove the city to think ahead and try to manage the traffic and the congestion before people move in, and then we have to try to manage the traffic and congestion around businesses that exist already. I guess my reason for being here is when I was at the zoning board meeting, the zoning board people all said, that's not our jurisdiction, we have nothing to do with that. We totally agree with you, and we really thought about that when we said it was okay for Mr. Paiva to build this new building, but we can't say no because of traffic. And they said that was fine. I was sitting here, and the council person for Mr. Paiva came up to me and said, go talk to the councilman. I'm like, oh, thank you. I didn't know what to do at that point. So it's all of the zoning board agreed with my statement. And I think that's really what I just want to put forward, is to suggest that the city try to manage the area before the problem happens versus after the problem when it's harder. My suggestions that I presented actually to Councilman Cahoon included allowing parking only on one side of Bright Ridge Ave, which would, again, make it easier to sort of see around and to maneuver around Bright Ridge to get to Warren. To put a traffic light at the end of Bright Ridge Ave, even, it seems like it would warrant it. It is busy enough. There is a school crossing guard that's already there at the end of Bright Ridge in that parking area that will soon be the Paiva Insurance Company, who crosses kids because Martin Middle School's down the street. So there's kids walking down that street all the time and crossing Warren Ave. And I used to take the bus and would have to cross that street, and it's very hard, and I was always thankful that the school crossing guard was there. My other suggestion would be also to consider prohibiting parking on Warren Ave on the side from Bright Ridge to Fenmore Street, or Bright Ridge to at least to the Sunoco gas station, so there's no one parked directly along that side, again, so that you could see to pull in and out. And the other thing is the speed on Bright Ridge. Bright Ridge Ave is a cut-through. I know it's a cut-through. I have no problems with it being a cut-through, but it is getting quite fast, and the other option would be something to consider would be like speed humps or speed bumps on Bright Ridge to slow folks down.
So thank you for coming up, and I know we spoke via an email about this concern. So in regards to this area, which has been well known to have a lot of traffic, right, a lot of the streets, Warren Ave, Waterman Ave, Taunton Ave, Pawtucket Ave, high volume, speed factors. So I'm glad that you mentioned it. So I did get a chance to speak with the zoning chair in regards to this, Mr. Pivas, and I did get to speak to in regards to what's going in. So what's going into Mr. Pivas is going to be a 3-unit, one of his, and 2 potential commercial that he's going to be renting, which he does have parking for. Right. So the traffic flow into that property, we don't feel that's going to be a big issue. At least they don't. Neither does Mr. Piva, depending on what goes on.
Depending on the tenants, though. Because he said, it could be a hairdresser, it could be a
depending
car,
on the tenants.
It could be a phone company. I'm like, well, that could be not 9 to 5. It could be much later, or
right, depending on his tenants. He does feel that it's going to be small commercial.
I would agree.
Properties, because his is going to be primarily office, where he's not going to have a lot of traffic coming in for his office specifically.
Right.
But again, the tenant's not sure. I did reach out to the traffic commission because I have other areas that are high traffic issues with turning and accidents and safety. Safety is a huge concern of mine in the center of the city. So the proposals that's going to be coming before, so I've submitted a letter in regards to this. So one of the things that has been proposed, or that I've submitted for their consideration, and of course with that's going to come a study, because everything requires a study and takes a little bit of time, is to eliminate that parking lane, which is pretty wide, where people are using to turn.
Yep.
So as you approach 195, there's a massive parking lane that isn't really used that often, because Sip and Dip's right there, so people aren't parking in front of Sip and Dip typically. And then Mr. Piva's, currently it's a vacant property, so we don't get a lot of people typically parking there. Yep. So to eliminate that lane, and rather do is enter a middle lane where it would be designated for turn only. That way people already know, approaching that intersection of Warren and Bright Ridge as we arrive there, that there's a directed turn only, and then that would continue traffic into that right lane going straight up Warren Avenue. I don't disagree with putting a no parking further up from Warren to Fenmore. But I'd have to look at the study, because there are businesses there, and they may require some parking, depending on their business.
Is the hair salon.
Right.
But that's actually almost at the corner of Fenmore. It's those initial spaces.
Right, so it might just need maybe 50 feet, 75 feet. I'm not really good with the measurements.
Would be helpful.
Right, so just a little bit extra to give you the leeway. Exactly, because I know how difficult that can be, turning there. As far as the parking on Bright Ridge, there's a lot of multifamilies. The parking lot, the driveways are an issue. They really don't have, they're not long. Some of them are short. So parking becomes an issue for residents if you're not able to park on the street. So I don't know if eliminating
but
one side.
I don't think that being a resident there, I actually spoke to some of my neighbors who both have multifamily apartments, and so they have apartments that they rent to, and their renters park on the street, and they were also in agreement with this. What happens is, folks park. If you're looking at Bright Ridge, folks park here and then here and then here
Right,
and then
scattered.
Here, as opposed to all together, they would all fit on one side. I'm not saying there shouldn't be parking on Bright Ridge, because I do agree with that as far as multifamily. But if you try going down there any morning, there's cars parked along both sides, and cars coming from both directions. Two cars cannot drive down Bright Ridge Ave at the same time because they come to a bottleneck.
Right. The thing with Bright Ridge is it's wider towards the Warren Avenue, and then it bottlenecks in more.
No, the bottleneck is the cars parked, not.
But the street itself does narrow in also.
I understand that, but
making it worse.
What people are stopping for is because they have a car in front of them and they can't. So they have to stop, and somebody else has to go. Right. And it becomes. Well, it upsets a lot of people. So there's a lot of road rage on Bright Ridge Ave, which is not a fun thing. No. And also, like I said, I believe Bright Ridge is long enough, and there is enough space on one side to accommodate all the cars that currently park on Bright Ridge now. That's all. That was me.
Yeah, so it's another consideration. I did, like I said, I think on the Warren Avenue part with the safety issues that address, I think, moving forward, I feel that the
I think, and I would totally agree with. Do you know? I couldn't remember whether Mr. Piva's property was the tenants and visitors going to exit directly onto Warren Ave or directly onto Bright Ridge and then out. Is it Bright Ridge?
Yeah.
Okay. So again, that would be another
diverting, right?
Like
I believe.
So right now, I can tell you at that end of Bright Ridge Ave, there's a lot of cars that are parked on Bright Ridge Ave on both sides. That's going to be very hard for cars to pull in and out of.
Yeah.
And it's more of a. There are ways it feels like that would be easy to make it simple and accommodate everyone. And again, I think it would behoove the city to think about it ahead of time.
Sure.
I think the idea of that middle lane on Warren Ave is a fabulous idea. One thing I would note the city should be aware of, or needs to be aware of, is that directly in front of that space that Mr. Piva owns is totally flooded out now on the road because it's sort of a sinky, so it might be hard to get cars going by where there's people waiting. It could be just a tough situation as far as wet and ice and things like that, just to be aware of.
Yeah,
so I don't know if it's something the city can.
Well, there would be a study,
and
that whole section would have to be lined
configured
and
or whatever.
Exactly.
If we could just move along that way, we do have another person who's waiting to speak as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and I'm happy to help with anything.
Sure, thank you, Susan.
We do have one other person remaining at this point in time.
Yes, the last person is Brian Dwiggins, and his topic is the power drop proposal.
Thank you, members of the City Council, for letting me speak for a couple minutes. I have like a little quick prepared statement for you guys. My name is Brian Dwiggins. I'm the owner of Borealis Coffee in Riverside Square. For those of you, I think I've met many of you over the years. But I'm here tonight to show my support of the proposed power drop in Riverside Square. It's already part of the master plan for the improvements in Riverside Square, which is great. And I'm very excited about all the work that's going to be coming into the neighborhood very soon. But with the proposal for the Sorry, I'm going to jump. Since we opened, it's always been my goal to create a space for the community. As many of you are aware, Borealis, in collaboration with the Riverside Renaissance Movement, hosted a tree lighting in the square for the last 4 years. That event is a perfect example of a cafe sort of acting as a venue, as a way to bring people together. It's important to note that most of the people that attend that event are not actually my regular customers, but they're people that have come from outside of Riverside or that are like already part of Riverside that are then sort of drawing people together. I've had several conversations about the potential of Riverside with city officials, residents, other business owners, and I think the power drop is just a way that can act as much more than just a way of turning the lights on. I think that with the power drop, that'll open up a whole new opportunity for potential bringing stuff in events into the square, whether that is like block parties in the summer, whether it's power for food trucks, bandstand for 4th of July, or maybe like some sort of fun booth for the Memorial Day parade. I think that this power drop could do a lot for sort of realizing that potential that so many people on the city council, in City Hall, residents, people like me, all really see down in Riverside. So Borealis and Riverside Renaissance Movement will continue to host the tree lighting, but why not unleash the potential to do a lot more than one event a year? A power drop could make the tree lighting even bigger, but also add other opportunities that could help people outside of Riverside see what a great place Riverside Square is. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. If I'm not mistaken, that concludes public comment at this point in time, and public comment is now closed. So you may proceed in the next docket item.
The next docket item is council communications, discussion on juvenile hearing board appointments and
Blessings to the next.
So next one is...
I'm going to move this along.
Yeah, the next one, I apologize, is council communications, discussion on juvenile hearing board appointments and updates. Council Vice President Rodrick.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. President, this is just on briefly try to get an update. As I look through the audience, I don't know who would answer my questions, maybe a Director Furtado, but the basic premise is evidently we have a skeletal crew running our juvenile hearing board. There are several vacancies, and there's again some confusion about the appointment process. And I've been contacted, and I know there was a member of the police department who recently discussed the need to get this hearing board back up to speed. There was some concern about charter appointments had to be done in October and only October. Now I'm hearing maybe we can go beyond that. So, I mean, it's not going to make or break the city government here, but what are we doing with this board? Is it a mayoral appointment? Are they council and mayoral appointments? So I'm just looking for some basic information.
Do you want to weigh in, Mike, or do you want me to?
Go ahead.
Okay. So I know the solicitors are working out the interpretation of the charter, but based on the ordinance as it stands right now, the majority of the seats are council appointments. I believe there are 2 alternates on the board. Those are mayoral appointments, but those are currently filled. But the board does have a number of vacancies. However, and the language does say that they have to be filled in October for some reason. I'm not sure why that is. But to allay any fears, I would like to clarify that with, just like any of our other boards and commissions, just because someone's term is expired doesn't mean that they're kicked off the board. They continue to serve until someone is appointed in their place. So it's not as if we have like a board that can't function at the moment. And I'm not sure if these members who have expired terms are aware of this. I can contact them and let them know. But
so what's the process? So there are council appointments? to this board?
So as best as I understand it, I wasn't at the meeting, but Assistant Solicitor Connolly has rendered an opinion orally that all the appointments under the current charter, unless specifically excluded by the charter or state law, are mayoral appointments. Some of them may require a council approval, like the zoning board. That's clearly in the charter. I've asked him to give me a written opinion on the basis of that. Of his opinion. He's working on it. I know I've seen a draft of it. I haven't got a chance to get back to him because I want a little bit more information on it. But that's his opinion based upon his reading of the charter and his participation in the charter commission process. I'm waiting for that formal written opinion so I can look at it and see if I agree or disagree with it. But that's his understanding as to what the charter language says. And so that made a big difference. And so to the extent that there's ordinances that say that are inconsistent with the charter regarding council appointments, because as you know, before there was a mayor, all appointments were basically made by the council because you were the executive and the legislative branch. That's now switched. So any ordinance that may say on the book today that it's a council appointment, it's the opinion of the assistant solicitor that ordinance is violative of the charter and that would go back to a mayoral appointment.
Okay, and I have no premise here that I'm looking to see appointments either way. I don't have I don't have a problem. It's just the issue of I'd like to see that board. And I know I did speak with a couple of members, one who's been on for a long time, and she's ready to move on. She did say she would be willing to stay until if needed, but I think it's time for us to. So maybe by the next meeting, we could.
Yeah, so Mr. Furtado is correct. The board is currently constituted. I know that some members may have gotten off talking about the juvenile hearing board, but you do continue to serve until a successor is appointed. So there should be no problem with a quorum being on that board, because unless someone doesn't want to serve.
Right, which actually I've been contacted by several people who said, I've done this for a number of years.
So I want to get off, yeah.
Yeah, I'm all set.
Yeah.
I also, and through the chair, Mike, if you could correct me if I'm wrong, but assuming that the ordinance stands as it is, there is nothing, to my knowledge, that would prevent the council from also changing the ordinance to say that all the appointments don't have to happen in October either. So,
yeah, that seems to be an odd part of the provision.
There are a couple of boards, like beautification, I think it has to be on December 1st. There's some strange language in the ordinances. But
who is the chair of the hearing board, or is there one? What I'm getting at is, could someone send an email or communication to the entire board, including those that are expiring terms, have terms expiring? They may know it, but they might not know if they've had any appointments to succeed them. So maybe they could be asked to please continue to serve until we have a new board, because from what I heard from at least one police person, they were not operating at optimum efficiency because of this.
I believe the chair is Jason Rafferty, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. But, okay, I think the point's been made, and we can move on. As down the line, I'd like to maybe see a report. Maybe we can ask them at another time. Is there any recidivism? What has the history been? Is the hearing board, has it been successful? We've had it for a number of years. I'm sure there's a cost applied to it, but that's for another day. Thank you.
Recidivism. I like that word.
I've been practicing that.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thanks, Mark.
We're going to move right over to the next item on the council communication for discussion only. Is B, which is discussion on 3D pedestrian walkway and speed bumps by Councilman Brito. I put this on because one of the things that I said in the past that I want to combat the speeding that we have throughout the city. Last time I talked about speed cameras in school zones, and I told the constituent at one point in time that they'll, that I will, one way or the other, continue to fight this and to see what type of options we have available to combat this problem that we have in the city. And it's not only in the city, but it's statewide and it's nationwide. But needless to say, if anybody ever gets the opportunity, just take a look online. This was brought to my attention by a constituent who also was concerned about speeding. When they read about the speed cameras, they said, hey, take a look at this as well. It's a 3D pedestrian walkway and/or speed bumps. Kind of neat. I'm not sure if other cities or municipalities are using it at this point in time, or if it's just a study. But I thought it'd be something worth the while to look into, and not so much even have a discussion, but just to throw it out there and hoping at one point in time, maybe if not today, but tomorrow, that it sticks. Thank you.
What's that web? You said there's a website?
No, it's not a website. It's just, Google it. Google if you get an opportunity, just Google it. It's neat the way, how it's all done. So, but that's all I have to say. Next item, please.
Next item is discussion on 3D pedestrian walkways and speed bumps. Council President Bruno.
He just did that one.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I was in the middle of working something out.
Okay, with that being said.
I am so sorry.
No, yeah, that's okay.
Next is new business. Approval of final contract, Liberty Roofing for award of bid in the amount of $372,000.
This was on the council docket last time, if I'm not mistaken, by head of facilities.
So at the last council meeting, you approved the award of the bid. There was no contract, however. In the future, we're going to do the same. We're going to do the bid and the contract in one resolution. But this is so. Just asking you to approve this form of contract because the amount is in excess of $50,000 and. We'll tie it together in one resolution in the future. I guess that's how it was done in the past. But
okay.
These are the standard contracts that the city issues.
So in the event, just moving forward, if we could just have a council person sponsor these so that council person can jump out and promote it in one fashion or the other.
Well, it'll be different. It'll be a resolution anyway.
Okay.
So.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Solicitor. And I think we did approve this. We had a discussion on this already, and we went through the whole. Okay. Councilman?
Therefore, we did approve and discuss. I would move approval of the final.
Okay. Do we have a second on this?
May I ask one quick question?
Sure.
Just not remembering what that value was at the time we discussed the bids. Is the approval of the contract award, is that the same amount that we discussed?
Yes. So this reflects the bid that was awarded.
Then I will second.
Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morato.
Aye.
Council Vice President Roderick.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
And Council President Bruno.
Aye. Next item, please.
Next is approval of final contract, commercial electric, for the award of bid in the amount of $95,665.
Mr. Solicitor, you want to just...
Same issue.
Okay. Very good. At the pleasure of the council, anyone have any discussion?
Same amount again. Same wording as bid.
Okay.
Okay. Then I move to approve.
Okay. Anyone?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morato.
Aye.
Council Vice President Roderick.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
And Council President Bruno.
Aye. Thank you. Next item, please.
Continued business. Approved capital improvement projects for the 2019-2020 budget year. Council President Bruno.
We all have a copy of the capital budget at this point in time. I know during the last previous meetings, I had indicated that I wanted a copy of this in an event that going forward that I wanted to know what we were voting on, and more importantly, how much was approved prior to the last discussion. Does anyone at this point in time have any questions with respect to what we had voted on for approval and the current dollar amount that we approved at this point in time? If no one has any questions at this point in time, I'll request to move to the next item. I'm able to see what I did not have in the past. We just continue to write on capital improvement, but we didn't have a record of what was approved and how much was expended up to that date. No questions?
I would say, Mr. President, no questions, but I want to thank you for getting this clarified, and at least now we have it in black and white in front of us, which will make things a lot easier and does tie into an item that I want to address, I believe, next.
Okay.
So
Councilwoman?
Just a quick question. I'm just looking over, and I don't see, one second. The Dog Park North Townie Pride Park that we did approve. unless my vision's not
No, you're absolutely correct.
doing me right here.
Those, and, no, it's okay. To my knowledge, neither of those projects were actually approved.
Yes.
The
Yeah,
pot
they-
of the money was approved. The projects individually weren't.
I'm sorry?
Can you repeat that?
Oh, yeah.
Right, yeah.
So what happened was, on the 9th or the 10th, I believe was the next to last hearing. And so you had requested that those additional items go on, but they had to be approved at the next meeting. And at the next meeting, because of the time constraints, they just said, we're going to go with the original amount was $3.69 million. Because I think with the additional items was another 150.
No. I remember correctly, we had this discussion on those two items. Councilman Brito specifically at a meeting after that did again reiterate those two items. They're on there, correct? And we all had that discussion. It was very clear that those two items were to be in that capital improvement projects, to come out of that capital improvement budget, setting the $75,000, correct? And the $6,000 for the dog park.
And I'll go back and I'll give you a brief memo on that. But it was the 9th. Maybe it wasn't maybe it was a workshop. And so you agreed to put these on. Okay, it was a workshop. So you had agreed at the work, right? You agreed to put them on for the next public hearing. And so the original budget was $3.69 million. There was another 150 on top of that. So when the council decided to go through these, they started in the capital, and they started to do a few, and they said, well, why don't we just hold off and we'll appropriate the 3.69 and leave that in there. And so of the 3.69, you have these items that have been approved and those that haven't been approved. Now, one item in here, and I don't know how to handle this at the moment, is under the fire, the replaced cardiac monitors. That was $40,000 in the original budget. During the capital process, in the last budget hearing, it was agreed that that was going to go to $80,000 because of this grant. Well, if I increase this by 40, I don't know which other line item to decrease. So you've got about, I don't know, about 1.4 million yet to be allocated.
Yeah.
I'm pretty certain that we went over, we said we weren't going to go, and we specifically said these few items, such as the dog park, Townie Pride Pie, during that time, because we wanted to make it clear that those were moving forward, and that the rest we would take on a case-by-case basis.
All right, I'll go back and check the tapes, but I think that, again, we had so many meetings. That was the very last workshop, and the 3.69 was going in, and the council said, well, they had a few extras to put on, and so.
So is this written in stone here? That what we have? Outside of the 1.3 that's also, that we have not used, because I thought it was perfectly clear. I'm not going to debate this issue this evening. However, I thought it was perfectly clear that those items were on. And if not, I don't want to, go back and forth about it at this point. But I think at some point that we're going to have to squeeze that in here.
We can look at the minutes and the record. The record, if there was a vote, the record will reflect the vote.
Yeah,
the minutes will be the place to go.
And the clerk said that she will revisit that as well. So, but let's take care of that first. But I thought it was. I'm under the impression that it was, and we'll revisit this conversation.
He still has a question about the other $40,000 for the matching grant for the.
I'm pretty sure we said we were doing that too.
We did
the 40,000. I'm sorry. What was that, Councilman?
Malcolm was also asking where he's going to get the other $40,000 to make up the $80,000 for the cardiac monitor matching grant. Correct?
Correct. So
We voted on the 80,000.
Yes,
remember
we
that?
did.
And so they'd have to come from one of those that have not been approved, I would assume.
Well, it can come from something that was approved as well. We could just make changes.
Well, we still have 1.3 million left in the capital.
I mean, that was from what was proposed, and one of the things that I said early on that, and I don't want to beat a dead horse on that, but I didn't want to utilize all that money because we talked about taking that money for, in the sense that, and Councilman Cahoon alluded to, the economy is not always going to be this way. And I specifically didn't want to go down that path of using the entire amount that was proposed. Because it's proposed doesn't necessarily mean that we have to spend that money. I mean, this is, the first year. This is 1 year. Next year, I mean, at some point in time, we got to curb that spending. And I understand it doesn't come out of, it's not tax in a way that we're raising taxes for this, and it's coming out of the capital improvement, but I don't want to expend all the money we have. I mean, I want to have something left over in an event that, the economy, which we do know at some point in time, is not going to continue in the direction that it's currently going in. So, again, I don't want to beat a dead horse on this. Let's see what the minutes have to offer from that workshop that we have, and then, although we have the 1.3, but there's also 3.6 that we approve that it can, if the council decides that it can come out of something that we approve and perhaps back it out of one of the other items that we approved.
Council President, I have the minutes to the meeting, but for that portion, if you'd like, I can transcribe it word for word so you guys have the actual dialogue that happened.
Thank you.
May I, Mr. President, because I think this speaks to a larger issue, right? And I know that Mark and Malcolm did a lot of work in kind of compiling this list for us so we could take a look at this. To me, the bigger concern is money gets appropriated. Money was appropriated in 16, 17. Either the project wasn't started for some reason or the project was started and completed. Did it go over budget? Was it under budget? Right. To me, I think that there's work to be done in going back and cleaning up and seeing if there's still money available. To my recollection, the council did not allocate funds for either the dog park or the Townie Pride Park, and I'm not taking a stance one way or the other. I just, to me that speaks to a larger issue is what's actually in, what's actually out, right? So now we have people that have a different perspective on that. I would very much like to see maybe included in next year's budget, maybe we can have some kind of project management software that tracks these things rather than trying to run around and grab everything with, an Excel spreadsheet and trying to go back to minutes and saying, all right, we walk out, boom, this is in, it goes forward. Malcolm could just pull the report for us instead of having to reconstruct, multiple meetings and watch the video and stuff like that. And that would give us kind of a sight picture at any given time without having to overburden somebody. This is what the capital budget looks like. This is what capital expenditures look like. Council, what do you want to do?
Thank you, Councilman. And you're absolutely right. But if I'm not mistaken, these were done right at the time of the budget workshop. So I didn't think there was too much run. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, because you had these right in your computer on a spreadsheet right at that point in time. But anyway, let's whether it's there or not, I don't know. We'll have to have a further discussion on this at some other point in time. That's why one of the things I wanted this, and we were requesting for something as this, because we had these workshop and budget 2 months ago, and I just think that going forward, whether it's a project management tool that we use for software to track this will be perfectly fine. But I think we can work this out in one fashion or the other.
Do we have a certified budget yet? The certified budget that was approved?
The final that gets approved by the clerk and the mayor.
Because I know that was something I talked about before, and we're still going to the end of the year, so 2 months into the new fiscal year, and we still haven't seen a final.
I haven't had anything. I don't think anything.
I know that Patricia is still working on it and getting it done, but I haven't seen it yet, the final.
Working on.
Just making sure the numbers are correct and putting it together so that she can certify it. The charter requires a certification from the clerk and the mayor that the budget presented, this is the budget presented, and this is the budget that.
All right, so can we have that by next meeting? Because we're 2 months into it right now.
I assume so. I will relay that request.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moore.
I would stay there, Mr. Director, please don't.
Are we moving on to the next item?
I guess, where we finish with.
Yeah, we concluded with that aspect. So now we're on, we'll continue business. Line item B, discussion on remaining capital project as proposed for 2019-2020 budget year. Councilman Vice President Rodericks, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just continuing with this discussion about accounts and fund balances, to piggyback onto the prior discussion, and I had sent in most of these questions or concerns, or hopefully the director did get to see them. We have listed under special revenue account. There's several items. I'm not going to go over all of them, but I picked out a few, and these are not complaints per se, but just questions about. Are these, where is, what are they? For instance, we list Project DEER, and as of October 31st, 19, a balance of just under $10,000. Now, unless that's something different, the Project DEER that I know hasn't been in existence for years, of part of the police department. So is this left over from when Project DEER was in existence? I know it's been 10 years or more. DEER is no longer a program. So that's the first one.
I'm sorry, Councilman, I might be a little lost, but I just want to make sure that are you talking about revenue accounts
I'm talking about special revenue accounts.
Is that on the agenda for tonight? That's my question.
Yes.
Right. The line item that we're currently on right now, number 7, business discussion on remaining capital projects as proposed for the budget year.
The capital projects?
Remaining projects. Some of these are old.
Oh, these are just other projects.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about revenue accounts. I misunderstood.
Yeah, I don't believe there are revenue accounts. There's such things like, well, for instance, DEER, and I know Officer Norton is here, and I don't want to interrupt you, but I'm sure you would concur that Project DEER has been about 10 years, I think, that at least. So is.
Yeah, I was going to say,
right.
I was in elementary school when that.
So this, what is this figure as of October 31st, $9,763 balance?
This is the first I'm hearing of this. All I can tell you is that's the balance that's remaining. I could go in and see if there's been uses in that in the last few years, because sometimes it'll be set up and then it kind of gets blended in, and so you use it for more than one thing.
Okay.
If you have a list of those, I can look at it.
I'll send you the list. I sent it in, but it probably didn't get to you in time. So what I'll do then is I'll wait. I'll just let you know there's something else. Forfeiture drug state, $285,000 is a balance as of October 31st.
I think we broke the forfeiture up between federal and state.
Again, I won't go through all of these. There's an item out of curiosity, senior center donation, $58,531. Was that a donation, a compilation of donations, or one donation? And it's available as of October 31st, so they can use that, right?
Correct. And the director is trying to set up a 501c3 to transfer those monies under their jurisdiction. But you have the same thing under Carousel, where you'll have donations for 3 or 4 or 5 different items that make that up.
Yeah, there's $117,697 under Crescent Park Carousel, and I know they're needing lots of money, and if they have a balance of October 31st, that's, I assume, just dedicated to the carousel.
That is correct.
Other than budgeted funds. the big one that some people have questioned, the Sabin Point Volkswagen settlement, which was about $850,000, and we have talked about that, and it appears that the original amount is still the balance as of October 31st, so I assume we have not yet started that.
I don't think so. I'd have to talk to
project.
Director Fazioli on that one. I know we didn't get the money that long ago.
Yep, and that's a good thing because some people were postulating that we were spending that on other things. Well, it appears we have not.
No,
because then that's another word.
Another word.
I'm keeping up with the president.
No, Mr. Councilman Cahoon.
And finally, a library donation fund of $144,000. And these are all, every one of these items have that's the balance as of October 31st. So that money is still there, still available. I'm trying to get a handle on, where they're going. So I'll send this to you directly. And in particular, that Project DARE. Now, that's a small amount of money, but it's still almost $10,000 in an account for a program that maybe 20 years ago has been gone. So I don't know what we would do with that. Would we shift that somewhere else?
Can we do the heating system in the police department?
Use it, yeah, for something. But I thought you had this list. I'm sorry. I don't want to blindside you with that. So thank you, Mr. President. I'm done. I'll send this in to everybody else.
Please, that'd be great.
Sure. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilman. Thank you, Mr. Moore. So before we proceed into ordinance, just want to go back to the beginning where we just have to vote on a license for Papagino's, if it's okay at the pleasure of the council. I'd like to just bump that up real quick for a beer wine license. Madam Clerk.
This is a licensing requiring public hearing for the vote. It's BVL Papagino's license, 80 Highland Avenue, 02914.
Everything's all set as far as their paperwork and administrative?
Yes, everything is.
Forms? Okay.
Yes.
Any questions from the council at this time?
Are they just changing tendon? What are they? Oh, beer and wine. They're coming.
It's just the beer and wine. Yep.
Sorry.
Just beer and wine.
Okay. Oh, she's here.
Present. Oh. Hi. Come on out.
Sorry you were so patient with us this evening. Would have got you up here earlier had I known you were here.
Hi.
Well, I just want to make sure, at the pleasure, anyone have any questions at this point in time?
I do not.
Okay.
No, I wasn't under the assumption you guys didn't have a liquor license.
We don't.
Yeah. Well, all right. This will be great. Addition. No questions. If there's nothing that's hindering the business, I move for approval.
Okay. We have a second?
I would second it with the suggestion that next time you come for approval, you bring some samples from Papagino's. That would help the case go along a little quicker, but I will second the motion.
Your solicitor is sweating on that one. I know you're kidding.
I'm only kidding, Mr. Solicitor. And it would have been less than $25.
Roll call vote, please.
Public hearing, Mr. President. I'm sorry.
It's a public hearing.
Yeah.
Okay. But anybody wishing from the public like to speak for or against this, please step up to the podium. If not, I will close public hearing at this point in time and leave it up to the council for a roll call vote.
I seconded it, and Councilwoman made the motion.
Right. Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morato.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
And Council President Brito.
Aye. Is there anything you'd like to say, or
No.
you all set? Okay.
Have a great
Thank
night.
you for your patience.
Thank you for waiting.
Patient.
Thank you.
We may proceed in.
The next under ordinances, first passage for vote, an ordinance, an amendment of Chapter 8 of the revised ordinances of the City of East Providence, Rhode Island, 1998, as amended, entitled Licenses and Business Regulations, sponsored by Council President Brito and Councilman Morato.
Councilman, you want to take the lead on this? This is a state provision, so.
Yeah, this ordinance is just to mirror the current state statutes. I guess they changed fairly recently. Yeah. So we're just mirroring the current state statute in this ordinance.
I can add a little bit if you want to add. So As you know, the city's been regulating mobile food establishments under its hawkers and peddlers license, and the State Department of Business Regulation over the last year established rules and regulations governing mobile food establishments, which are the food trucks, and the state in accordance with state law. So they basically said that every city and town by the end of this year has to adopt an ordinance that regulates mobile food establishments, food trucks, consistent with the rules and regulations that have been promulgated and consistent with the Act. The most prominent being that, and the clerk can correct me, but I think our license fee used to be, was it $300 under the hawkers peddlers?
Yes, that's correct.
And so under the state law, the license fee for these mobile food trucks can only be $75. So that's the biggest change as far as the licensing fees. And it also limited what the cities and towns could do as far as the limit the food trucks. The limits are, cities and towns were allowed to regulate the different types of food trucks according to the length of time they stop at any given location. They can include limitations in permits into location, hours of operation, and noise, and issue short-term permits for events. What these food trucks now have to do is they have to get a license from the state. They have to present that license to our local clerk. As long as they have that clerk license, and as long as they have that state license and meet our local requirements, we're required to give them a license. But it's really, the state has taken over, and they get the state license by showing a fire inspection by the state fire inspector, so our local fire people no longer inspect it. They get a license from the State Department of Health indicating that they've been inspected by the State Department of Health. So they're just trying to regulate it on a statewide basis while still giving the cities and towns to regulate the time, manner, and place where they can sell their food. So this is what this ordinance does. I cannot take credit for this ordinance. This comes from Assistant Solicitor Dylan Connolly, who wrote a similar one for Johnson.
Thank you for that explanation. At the pleasure of the council.
I make motion to approve. I don't see anything
First passage.
wrong for first passage.
We have a motion to approve for first passage. Anyone like to second that motion?
Second.
We have a second. Roll call vote, please.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morato.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodriguez.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
And Council President Brito.
Aye, and again, that is first passage, so we'll be on for the next docket item as well. Next item.
Next item is second and final passage for vote. It's also a public hearing. An ordinance, an amendment of Chapter 3 of the revised ordinances of the City of East Providence, Rhode Island, 1998, as amended, entitled Animals, Section 3-41.
This is a public hearing, we'll say first and foremost. However, again, this is to realign our ordinances with what we have with the state at this point in time. I don't have the reading on this. We did go through this during the last council meeting. If anybody has any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them. But this is a public hearing, so before I close it with the council, I'm going to ask that anyone from the public choosing to speak for or against this ordinance, please step up to the podium. Anyone wishing to speak for or against this podium, this ordinance, please step up to the podium. If not, public comment is closed at this point in time.
Mr. President.
And I will leave this at the pleasure of the council.
Move approval.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morato.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
And Council President Brito.
Aye, thank you. Next item, please.
Next item is reports of other city officials. Mayor, communications to the council. We've taken care of item 1 earlier. The second item is Riverside Square revitalization update, presented by David Baccarat.
Good evening. This is a project that I wrote a grant to Commerce, Rhode Island for the Riverside Square area, and they awarded $70,000 of grant funds, and we had a 20% match of $30,000 that the city manager at the time presented. And it's actually a timely update because it does have to do, it does incorporate the electrical drop. So this is the bike path leading into the Riverside Square area. from where the bike path goes underneath the roadway and enters into Riverside Square, starting on Washington Avenue and going all the way into the square. What you have up on screen is a master landscape architect plan for this project's implementation. And I just wanted to bring it to your attention because I believe it's somewhat of a significant project for Riverside Square. The concept with Commerce, Rhode Island is economic development. And the idea is we have over 800,000 trips a year on this bike path of folks going right through the square. And this project is designed to slow down that those folks on the bike path and create a curiosity about this square that they're going through and potentially have them slow down and stop. Some of the components of this project are pollinator gardens that will attract various birds and pollinator bees and so forth, and also present a learning opportunity for the area schools about native species, because all of the landscaping in this project are using native species, low maintenance, naturally occurring. We've also incorporated some hardscape surfaces to accommodate annual and also just throughout the year events that will also help with the economic development of the area. Why the electrical drop is of interest to me, that happens to be in the City Council, is that will feed an electrical conduit that runs up the entire, in this plan, that will run up the entire east side of the bike path, that will run up underground but will have periodic receptacles that will allow various events to occur that need power along the path, whether it's a mobile stage. I know the community recently did a tree lighting. It would accommodate the tree lighting. Also on this plan is lights over the bike path, and also lights going over Bullocks Point Avenue and along the square of Lincoln Avenue and Bullocks Point. So I just want to make everybody aware of this plan. We will be doing requests for proposals. This plan does have also some public artwork that's part of it. Up to 3 sculptures are going to be in a request for proposals that will be staged along the bike path. And again, this is designed to create a curiosity of those 800,000 trips a year, to have those folks slow down and potentially venture off of this bike path into the square. To facilitate that, we also are going to focus a small, what's called micro enterprise loan program for the square to help encourage new businesses such as Borealis Coffee or Proud Marys, which are also recipients of loan programs that the city provides, to try to boost the commercial activity of the square and also support the commercial activity of the square. So we feel that with the lighting over the path, the lighting along Bullocks Point Avenue and within the square, the additional landscaping, benches, public artwork, hardscape surfaces, we hope to generate an area that will become a public gathering place, a attraction, and pull in more of a regional pull to the square and hope to support the commercial entities that are presently in the square and those new ones that may be interested in relocating. This plan's implementation is due to occur in the spring of 2020. We will be doing the procurement of a landscape contractors over the winter, and we will also be doing the procurement of the artists for the sculptures over this winter. And, you know, basically that's the concept behind this plan and its implementation. We have, as you will do the math, about $100,000. We will try to implement as much of that as possible with those funds. I know that there was a grassroots community group that you guys may be aware of, the Riverside Renaissance, and they are very interested in this plan and in supporting it. So if those certain elements like the artistic sculptured benches or trash receptacles that are part of this plan that we can't fund with the grant funds and the city funds, they are looking into supporting those elements as best they can. So I believe that pretty much concludes the general concept for this plan, and I'm open to any questions that anyone may have.
Sure. So, David, where along that bike path are these electrical receptacles going to be installed?
If you look at the bike path as we're seeing it now and look towards the ceiling, so that the white area, there will be a straight conduit run.
Let me point it out to you.
Sure.
Just direct me.
Sure, I can...
Just direct me. Tell me where.
So this will be the, I believe, the electrical drop that will feed a conduit going roughly along this forced main.
Okay.
Definitely won't be going directly over the force main because, you know, we want to avoid any type of infrastructure improvements or maintenance or repairs to interrupt this plan.
So electrical receptacles sticking out of the ground.
Yes,
that's
so we
that's a
want
safe
those
option.
periodically going up this path.
Yep.
So that will...
That's a safe option, though, having electrical receptacles sticking out of the ground and having people plug in stuff. That's safe.
Yes, because that will be controlled by the city. So at the electrical drop, we will have the ability to have those live when we have events and have it dead at other times.
So my concern, listening to the Riverside Renaissance and some of the residents from the beginning of this year, which was January, the whole reason for this wire drop conversation was for a Christmas tree.
Yes.
Correct? Okay. The Riverside Renaissance, the owner of Borealis, and everybody else, okay, their opinion, the Christmas tree should be between that grass area, between Borealis and Pawtucket Avenue. Okay, you remember that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Matter of fact, we've had a couple of public meetings with...
Correct. Let me just finish for a second. So then after that, the Christmas tree moved to maybe the World War II monument. Then it moved over to the parking lot between Borealis and Dairy Bee. And then after public discussions, emails from public concerns, the Christmas tree idea was scrapped from this plan.
Correct.
Correct? Okay.
What this plan does do is accommodate in the future if the community wants to have that Christmas tree lighting various places, whether it's in the place that they had it this year, which was quite successful, or in other places, all of those options are now open, including additional event options. So we envision, stages that will be set up, mobile stages, through the summer and spring for potential performances. There was people interested in Shakespeare in the Park type performances, and that's what the hardscape surface is, that if you can tell somewhat the, I would say, rusty colored in areas, right where you see the sidewalk crossing, bisecting the plan, and then further to the north or to our left as we look facing the plan. So that's part of the idea, is to expand these events throughout the year to bring in more and more of the public to this area.
I'd just like to make one quick observation. Is there any way that we can get a laser pointer going further?
Yeah, we did.
Going further, that we can have one here, so in the event that anybody has one, okay.
I like Ricardo being the pointer.
Yes, I could, if I move away from the mic, I can point out the hardscape surfaces where potential events could be staged.
So is the white all going to be grass and greens?
Yes, both sides of the path will be grass and greens and pollinator gardens.
Right.
Now, I've already been in touch with both the Riverside Renaissance Group, the Park and Rec, and also a local nonprofit in terms of the future maintenance, cleaning up trash, watering. The biggest challenge with this plan is to make sure that we water it so that all of the landscaping elements take and get established for the first year. So I've gone to lengths to make sure two things. One, in New York, there was a similar concept that was used on an old railway called the High Line. And what they did there is they used native species along the entire concept, because native species thrive naturally there. They're naturally occurring. So that's the same concept here. We'll be using native species. And as long as we get through that first season and have these, the landscape established, I think that we have enough community interest and area interest to maintain it, so that the fear of a plan like this is it looks great once it's implemented the first year, and then it starts degrading and deteriorating as years go by and the maintenance is lacking. So that's one of the critical aspects of the sustainability of this plan.
Okay. Any other
How much did you
questions?
get for the grant?
We got just under $70,000 for the grant. And another aspect is that the 3 sculptures, through community meetings, most of the community meetings, the highest preference was sculptures that would basically attract people to interact with the sculptures. Namely, if it was a carousel horse from, similar to the carousel further down, they would want to have their children sit on it and take a picture of it. Or if it was a old-fashioned bicycle, it's going to, hopefully, the sculptures would entice people to want to take their pictures with these sculptures, and then social media will help us promote this area via those sculptures.
Now, are we planning, do you foresee coming to the city for additional funds for this revitalization?
No.
Okay, so everything has been allotted that needs to be the 75, the additional 3,500, that's up for the drop.
Yes, if the city covers the drop, that would be separate from this grant and the city funds. That's something that City Council has done but the rest of this plan is dependent on the almost $70,000 of the grant and $30,000 of city funds. So I'm working with just under $100,000 to implement as much of this master landscape plan. We'll currently have submitted this plan to the Department of Transportation because this is the state property for what's called a PAP, which is a type of permit that will allow us to proceed. I've been told by engineering and DPW that they don't anticipate any problems with that. The pavers that are going to be used for the hardscape that I just pointed out are permeable, which means that with rainfall, they will leach the rain down into the soil so it won't create additional runoff. They also have a kind of a nice second benefit, and that is they can be used for fundraisers. So these pavers literally, after installation, there could be a fundraiser, let's say by a community group, that people want to sponsor a paver. We can literally take the paver out, have it inscribed, and then put back in place as fundraisers.
Sure. Okay. No further questions.
Any other questions from the council? Thank
I
you, sir.
appreciate your time.
More than welcome.
Thank you much.
Okay. Next item, please.
Next item is item B. On A3, that was just communication to the council. It's just a memo. And so we are on reports of other city officials, City Solicitor Mike Marcello, Claims Committee report.
Are we skipping?
There's no communication on.
Oh, none? Okay.
No
All right,
communication.
very good.
Just for the, yep,
Oh,
just
okay.
a memo.
There was,
Mr. Solicitor?
okay, so just read the memo, so that's the extent of the.
I think it's just a sharing of information, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
If you have questions on it, I guess you can deal with another council meeting.
All right.
Yeah, no, I've had that memo for a while. I just
Yeah.
wanted to say the plan seems solid to me, having read through it, so.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Council President, at 6:30, the City Council met as a Claims Committee. There was one claim for $300, for $443.27 for Edward A. Iyasu, I guess, and the claim was approved in the amount of $300, which is the maximum amount allowed under law for pothole claims. By unanimous vote.
Thank you, Mr.
That
Solicitor.
concludes my report. Thank you.
Okay. And we're going to move right along to letter C.
Letter C, that's me. Approval of the 2020 meeting dates for East Providence City Council. This is for a vote. Currently, the meeting times for executive session are 6:30 and 7 p.m. for open session. The council meets the first and the third Tuesdays of the month. The only thing that I saw that might be an issue is September 8th, which is primary elections, November 3rd, which are the presidential elections.
So if I could just make a correction, the first Tuesday in September is actually the 1st of September. So we can correct it by just changing that.
Perfect.
September has 5 Tuesdays.
Thank you.
So that works out well.
Yes, it does.
Keep in mind, September 5th is also an important date.
Your birthday?
That's my birthday.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Good thing it's on Saturday.
So that just leaves November 3rd.
I was just making that up.
May I
It may
raise
be
one,
presidential primary.
one issue for the council's consideration? My work schedule being what it is, and has recently changed, which kind of requires me to take a 5:40 train out of South Station, which gets me back here at like 7. So I wonder if the council would have any appetite for maybe pushing back in FY or 2020 the start of our executive session to 7 and the start of our public session to 7:30. And I understand if the council can't accommodate and you don't want to do that, but that would really help me out.
Yeah. And I think we can accommodate that.
I think we would-
I mean, I don't even think that's a question or concern, to be
no
quite honest
problem.
with you. If that's the
Okay, I
direction we were moving, and commence in the beginning of 2020, that will start our meetings, just as long as we get that out to the public. We'll start our meetings, executive session at 7 p.m., and we'll begin the open meeting at 7:30. We'll just have less items on the docket, and we can move quicker through the process, so we're not here that late, especially after working a long day. I'm sure you don't want to be here till 10, 11 o'clock in the evening.
Oh, you see me get grumpy around 10 o'clock.
So I just wanted to add, on the November 3rd, which is the presidential election, we could make it to the 10th, which is the second Tuesday of the month.
The only thing I would point out is that we would have to coordinate that with the school committee as they work through their own, too, because they do the second Tuesday.
I'll do that.
So.
Well, we could do it on the 4th, the 3rd Tuesday.
Well, you want to check with the school department, and then we can do either or?
Mm-hmm.
I can share.
Well, there's the Senate,
Congress, House.
Yeah.
Right, but.
Maybe they can move theirs to the 3rd, and we take the 2nd.
Okay. I'll follow up with the school department tomorrow and let you guys know.
Can we just adopt the schedule as
We could change it later.
amended later? Is it just so we just have a set schedule that we can post on the Secretary of State's, which is required in January with your new times, and then if we have to amend the second date, or remove a date or add it, we can do that later.
Sounds reasonable.
Yeah. All right, very good.
So then to
But we have an idea as to what the dates based on Councilwoman's choices there. So we're good with that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I'm saying we're good that. Go
Okay,
ahead.
to understanding the council's okay with going from 7 executive session, I move to approve the calendar as proposed.
As amended.
2020.
As amended.
No, as amended.
Just read the
rather.
dates. Read the dates.
Yes. So I will second that, and I'll just read the dates for clarification. So as Councilman Cahoon mentioned, executive session will start at 7 p.m. Open session will commence at 7:30 for the dates of January 7th, January 21st, February 4th, February 18th, March 3rd, March 17th, St. Patrick's Day, April 7th, April 21st, May 5th, May 19th, June 2nd, June 16th, July 7th, August 4th, September 1st, September 22nd, October 6th, October 20th, November 10th or the 17th, depending on the outcome of the school committee's discussion. November 17th, December 1st, and December 15th. So that's my seconded motion.
Okay, roll call vote.
Councilman Cahoon?
Aye.
Councilman Morato? Council Vice President Rodrick?
Aye.
Councilwoman
Aye.
Souza?
Aye.
And Council President Brito?
Aye, very good. Next item, please.
Next item is under resolutions for vote. The first one is resolution authorizing the mayor to provide funding due to the East Providence School District, sponsored by Councilman Cahoon.
So the resolution's in your packet. It's fairly straightforward. This is based on the joint meeting that we had with the school committee back in November. What was discussed at the time was the idea of taking that due to liability of approximately $6.5 million, and I wrote approximately in the resolution because I don't want to hold up the resolution based on, an exact penny amount. And it was the school department's preference that the city would make that liability zero over the course of 4 years with 4 equal allotments. Understanding the fact that this does not change the school department's appropriation for FY20, which was approved as part of the budget, the idea behind the resolution is to just capture that and make that final. So what the resolution states is that that amount of approximately $6.5 million will be broken up The due to amount will be broken up over the course of the next 4 fiscal years to include FY20, at the end of which it would ideally be 0 in 4 equal payments. Understanding that the accounting from year to year is never going to be exact, we're probably going to be looking at due to, due from kind of liabilities on a year-by-year basis, but the intent was to address this particular one so we could simply move past this issue and start talking about things that we need to talk about.
Mr. President, just one quick question. It's just for that approximate total amount. We're not talking about interest at all.
No, it does not include.
Right. I would second that motion.
So we have a motion on the floor for the resolution.
Oh, I made the motion. Yep. All right, okay.
And we have a second?
Just a quick question. So this would go into their general fund, or are they allocating it to a capital fund budget?
Well,
or whatever they want?
It doesn't say. I think what their aim is to put a focus on capital projects. But again, it's kind of up to them.
Okay.
But I do think that, in the preference that they stated up here was they do have capital need, and I think they're pointing in that direction. So
it was a motion.
Any
made
further?
and seconded.
Motion, second. Roll call vote, please. Unless anyone at the pleasure of council has any other questions. If not, roll call vote.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morato.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
And Council President Brito.
Aye. Next item, please.
Next item is a resolution authorizing the mayor to pay invoices for pre-construction expenses for the new East Providence High School, sponsored by Councilman Cahoon.
So the invoice total for this month is, it's in our packet, it's $2,239,848.68. That includes the invoices to be paid to the architect, to the building company, and to the engineering, the OPM, the owner's project manager, and to the engineering company. To date, Councilwoman Souza, because you asked this question, this is a good question. We should remind folks, with payment of the invoices, that will bring total paid to date for the school construction project of $15,313,780.
Thank you for that.
And the project is still on schedule?
The project is still on schedule. If you, so you'll notice that, the foundation is essentially in, the footings are essentially in. There's a lot of backfill going on right now to kind of fill up those footings and foundation. The next big milestone is right around the 1st of February, the beginning of February. That's the delivery of steel. So structural steel should start going up right around, that early February time frame. So that's kind of a good marker. I mean, that's what I'm kind of paying attention to say, okay, we hit that marker, let's move to the next one.
Okay. Good.
Motion to approve.
Can we get a second?
Second.
Roll call vote.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morato.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
And Council President Brito.
Aye. Next item, please.
Next item is resolution authorizing the mayor to convey property located on Beach Point Drive, sponsored by Council Vice President Rodricks.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. President, this is an item that we've discussed twice under litigation and executive, not litigation, in executive session, and it basically is a small piece of land on Beach Point Drive, which is down in a marshy area in the back of, way in the back of the carousel, if you will, close to almost the Barrington town line. It is not buildable for anything. This involves a quitclaim deed because the ownership is not really known. And it's a small piece of, did go by it today just to double check, and it's just kind of an overgrown patch of land that some people are dropping trash at, and the abutting neighbor has put in an offer to take control of it, pay the city $6,500. I guess that was negotiated between City Hall and the owner, and be a quit claim deed, which would give no responsibility to the city after this. If it's determined that there are problems with this piece of this patch of land or any other legal issue, it's up to this new owner, not the city. And it puts so very little bit of money on the tax rolls. Right now, it's zero. And it puts $6,500 into the general fund of the city. The choice is to just leave it alone and have it trashed in the neighborhood. So we have discussed it at least twice in executive session, and I don't know if this is public hearing. It is.
No,
so, it's not. Okay. So there may be other questions, but I'll initially make the motion to approve.
A second.
Okay, if there isn't any questions at this point in time, we have a motion on the floor for approval. Seconded. Any questions? No questions. Roll call vote, please.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morato.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
And Council President Brito.
Aye. Next item, please.
Next item is a resolution authorizing the mayor to allocate funds to pay for the wire drop/electrical project in Riverside Square, sponsored by Councilman Morato.
I'm not going to beat this one to death. I think I've explained and talked about this at length. If the council wants me to read it, I will read it. However, I just want to make a motion at the pleasure of the council.
Okay.
Whatever the results are, they are. Make a motion to approve as it's written.
Okay.
I will second.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor, seconded by Councilman Cahoon. Roll call vote, please.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morato.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
And Council President Brito.
Aye. Next item, please.
Next item is resolution authorizing the granting of an easement to tie into the city's public sewer system, sponsored by Councilwoman Souza and Council Vice President Rodrick.
So I don't know if you want to mention anything about this.
I had a couple comments. I'll defer to you first,
Sure.
if you do.
So I initially had some questions, and I did speak at length to our city engineer. So through the council president, I would ask if our city engineer could come up to the podium to address any questions and just be engaged in the conversation for the public. So as we discussed, or to our knowledge, so currently Elmwood Dodge is in a septic system, right? You mentioned. So they're looking to for an easement by the city, and so that they can tie into our sewer line. They currently receive water from the city, but not into our sewer system. So they would be going through the vocational school, the parking lot between the vocational building and the school, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And they would be responsible for doing all of this work that it entails to put?
That's correct. They'll install all the pipe, all the manholes, correct.
Okay. And would this be starting during our school year? Like, how quickly are they looking to?
So they started some of the work on their property, so they would like to do it while the kids are out during the Christmas break.
So rapidly?
Correct.
Okay. And who is it from the city would be overseeing? Are you?
So the engineering department is out there overseeing their installation.
Okay. All right. Those were my concerns.
May I ask, Councilwoman Souza and Eric, if I can ask you, has this been coordinated with the school department, given that we have a lot of activity going on that footprint?
Yeah, we've looked at the plans. It's been, discussed with them, so they're all right with it. There's going to be some tennis courts over there, along with some other the manholes over there, so they'll be taking care of that when they install the tennis courts. They'll be doing the final restoration over there.
But with regard to the actual work that needs to take place, is that a big job? Is that a small job?
Small job.
Okay.
A couple hours. They'll be in and out of there.
Okay.
Yep. Yep, very small.
All right. For my part, I think that covers everything. This is a win-win for the city. We get someone off septic into sewer, and it helps everybody, so I'm fine.
Yeah, they're in a tough situation there. There's no public sewer in Taunton Avenue there. It's actually going to be the Elmwood Dodge and their corner lot. So the two of them will be connecting into the sewer system, so it'll be good.
And they would be on the same rate as any other commercial, no different? Okay, good. All right, wonderful. So, and any other further questions from the council? I move approval.
Okay. Have approval. Anyone like to second that?
Second that.
Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morato.
Thank you, Mr. Stagworth.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
And Council President Brito.
Aye. Next item.
That would be adjournment.
Does anyone like?
There's, Councilman Morato has an announcement.
So I got a prize for the ugliest sweater.
Oh, okay.
And my opinion, there was only one judge this year, and it's going to go to Council President Brito, but it's a twofold though. So I'd like you to open this.
Oh, gee. Should I?
Yes, please.
My vote for the ugliest sweater would have been Councilman Cahoon.
Get open that.
My mother bought me
Take it out.
Actually, I don't know where I got it.
So I also vote him as the best council president for this term for East Providence.
Providence, huh?
Yeah. So that's an Emmy. That's a real Emmy right there.
Oh, thank you. Well,
all right.
On behalf of the city and the city council, I would like to thank Councilman Morato for this award. I appreciate it.
Also, I just want to point
bring
out
me
that
to
you
my
have a
knees
tag
into
hanging.
tears.
You know, I'm sorry.
You know the reasoning for that, don't you? But anyway, thank you.
Welcome.
How about if I leave that right there?
Very nice.
No, I appreciate it, though.
Okay.
All kidding aside, thank you.
And all kidding aside, I'll take this opportunity in the holiday spirit to thank Council President Brito for a very relaxed atmosphere at the meetings, for allowing the public to speak. Sometimes the 3 minutes goes to 4 minutes, but the public is getting their chance to speak, and I appreciate the fact that there are times we don't all agree on every little thing, but we've been agreeing on most things. So I wish all the council and all of East Providence Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and a safe holiday season.
Well, thank you, Councilman. I don't think it's me. I think it's us. We pull this together, not me. We all do this together. But likewise, I want to thank and wish everyone a happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Sergeant Norton, and happy holidays, and more importantly, a safe holiday as well. And thank you all for patience and dealing and putting up with me as well.
Move for adjournment.
Second. Roll call vote.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morato.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza. Aye. And Council President Brito.
Aye. Do I leave this here or do I take this?
Oh, you should take it.